Welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar Patient-Centric Supply Chain of Pain Management Consulting. Today we are with 40 people from 20 organizations, and our aim for today is to inspire, connect and share experience with you, which you can use to further improve your patient's impact. Therefore, no fancy slides, but a panel discussion about real life stories, successes, failures and learnings along the way. I am Patrick Filius, partner at Pain Management Consulting and industry lead Pharma and Healthcare. Together with Linda, my colleague, I will host the session for today. But before we start, I would like to introduce to the speakers. First of all, Linda.
Yes, thank you very much, Patrick, for introducing me. I'm a supply chain consultant already for more than 18 years in the pharmaceutical industry. And I'm working closely with Bain with several pharmaceutical companies. Thank you.
The other speaker is Danielle Ekma from Amgen. Danielle, may I ask you to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Patrick. And thanks for having me here. So my name is Danielle Ekma and I work for Amgen. And Amgen is a research-based biotech company. And we develop, manufacture and distribute medicines to patients who suffer from serious illnesses. And Amgen is a global company and we're based in California. And over the last 15 years, I've been working for the company. I've been in several roles in the supply chain organization. Today, in my current role, I'm leading the customer-facing supply chain for the region Europe. And we serve in this region over more than 3 million patients. So thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. The second speaker for today is Maarten Ploegen from Haga Hospital. May I ask you to introduce yourself, Maarten? Maarten, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Patrick. Hello, everybody. My name is Maarten Ploegen. I'm head of the pharmacy, the outpatient pharmacy of the Haga Hospital. And we are specialized in the care for pharmaceutical care for patients with cystic fibrosis. And we have a nationwide patient support program for this group of patients. And I'm very interested in the point of view of the suppliers and the manufacturers in this process. So I'm very happy to speak at this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Maarten, and welcome. Last but certainly not least, I would like to introduce Caroline Jachtenberg from the Amsterdam University. May I ask you to introduce yourself, Caroline?
Yes, thank you, Patrick, and hello everyone. My name is Caroline Jachtenberg and I'm an assistant professor at the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. And there I do research on logistics and healthcare, and preferably the overlap between those two topics. And over the last 6 months, me together with 4 of my colleagues from the Department of Operations Analytics have investigated the Dutch pharmaceutical supply chain. We've interviewed several parties in the chain, and the results of that are actually available online. So if you Google them, you may find them, or if you can't find it, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to send you the report.
Great, thank you very much. Before we move into the agenda for today, I also would like to take the opportunity to do a small introduction of Bain Management Consulting. Bain Management Consulting is the strategy execution boutique. With 40 professionals, we help organizations to realize and accelerate systemic change from strategy to execution. Making impact is what our professionals drive. It's our aim to play a role in a healthcare system that evolves to a more outcome-driven system and maximizing value for all stakeholders, but of course, above all, the patients. And to realize this, we focus on 3 different areas. The first one is value-based healthcare. It's everything around patient care pathway, home care excellence, patient-centric solutions. The second is customer experience. It's all about customer engagement online or offline, but also omni/multi-channel marketing, and of course the customer-centric organization. And the last one, or the third one, is supply chain management, everything around logistics, supply chain, and also sales and operations. Linda and I are not doing this with the two of us, but with a team of professionals with in-depth experience within biotech, big pharma, and hospitals across different therapeutical areas. I would like to hand over to Linda.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Thank you for the introduction. So for the rest of the webinar, we will discuss, of course, the big topic, patient-centric supply chain. So I'll give some brief explanations and some ideas around it so that we have the same understanding. After that, we will go into the panel discussion. We will do that with 3 statements. I will explain on that a bit later so that it's clear for you what we are going to do. And in the closure, we will discuss, of course, some questions. So feel free to put the questions in the chat. We will get them at the closure so that we and the panel people can discuss them. So for now, we will go over to the patient-centric supply chain. So first of all, we discuss what is a pharmaceutical supply chain. Yeah, there are a lot of definitions around it. And as you can see, a supply chain is a system with organization, people, information, finance flows that make sure that the products end up at the customer or a consumer. But what makes the pharmaceutical supply chain so special? And of course, there is a lot of thinking about it, but we all know that it is supply chain is always a global supply chain, because you start with the ingredients which come from somewhere over the globe, and that will end up with the patient. A patient has specific needs. Of course, it's prescribed with medicines. And what is also very special about it, of course, is that we have to deal, and it's always sometimes a challenge to put the regulations and the quality requirements in the chain, because that makes it happen. And we have to deal with that as well. So why do we think we have to change? So why is that systemic change for the pharmaceutical supply chain so needed? Now, what we see, of course, is that there is a big change in the drug products. It's more diverse, it's getting more personalized. So we have to make sure that the dosing regime is getting correct to the patient. It's becoming very complex, and also the medication management is really needs to be done for those different therapies. So you see that it becomes very crucial and critical that the product supply and the quality around it comes to the patient. And how do we do that? Yeah, we do that with supply chain. So with one hand, you see centricity, where we want to avoid the product errors, medication errors. We want to have big adherence, but most of all, we want to have an effective therapy, and we want to make it very easy for the patient. So what do we need to do in that supply chain? Of course, first of all, we need to understand those patient needs. If we don't understand that, it's difficult to make sure and to transform that supply chain. And on the other hand, and we have seen that lately very well with COVID, but also with the shortages of the drug supplies, the traceability of that sales unit. And I've worked the last couple of years with serialization, which I still believe that is the first part that we have some connection between the product and the patient on a unit level. So you see also, of course, a huge increasement in digitalization. So what can we do with mobile health and electronic services? So a lot to do there still. So going back to patient centricity, I already mentioned it, it becomes more and more crucial to have a good understanding of this patient. What does that patient really need, and only that product? And there's a whole psychological and social characteristics behind it. And we have to get them understanding so that we can design the best drug product and design also the best benefit with the correct treatment. So it's not about shipping a product anymore, like Martin says. It's really behind every product there is a patient. So if you look into it, we only see challenges. So why doesn't it work? What's the challenge there? So what we see in the supply chain, of course, it's really set up for production-centric consumption. It's not capturing the patient consumption. We are busy with SKUs and units, making sure that the batches are correct and making sure that the product gets out of the door. And second, yeah, that's it. Everybody works in his own area, in his own boundaries. So we don't oversee the whole supply chain from start till the very end. And the patient is not centralized into that. And a third of it, it's I think very important, is that the technology, of course, is also not completely connected. So if you look to the development of drug product, there is a lot of systems and process technologies behind it. Big ERP systems needs to be implemented, and that's already a challenge by itself. And if you go downstream, of course, there you have the information of the patient dossiers and everything what's applicable. So how do we connect those two worlds and all that systems together? The fourth one, of course, is that I think also not less important is the financial flow. So we see, of course, that everything is set up to have, which is based on that product, on that unit and the cost of goods. So there is not a kind of activity-based costing. We don't know the real true supply chain costs. So there is also a change needed before we really can create a whole supply chain together. I think all of this makes it happen that it's time to see what you think of it, but also what the panel thinks of it. So how are we going to start the discussion? The discussion we will do with 3 statements. We have developed 3 statements, and of course, we like to hear what the panel thinks about it, but we're also very interested in what you think about it. So you can go with your mobile to menti.com. And if you open menti.com, you see a first statement. Menti.com can be logged in. I have to pick the number, which is 40256241. So I will repeat, if you go to menti.com, you can go into the codes 40256241. I'll give everybody a moment to log in. Okay, and there you see the first statement. Feel free to add questions into the chat. And the first statement is, it is impossible for a supply chain to add patient-centric value. Now, let's wait a moment. I still see people.
The majorities at least disagree at this moment.
Yeah. $16 people so far. Okay, so what we see is that 75% disagrees with this statement, but there is also 25% who agrees. So I'm curious what our panel thinks of it. Let me hand over to Danielle from Amgen. So how do you see this?
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. It's an interesting statement, and I disagree. I think traditionally, if you look to supply chain, and you just already explained like what the supply chain is from raw materials all the way to the patient, is that we always have added a lot of value to this. And so the traditional supply chain, how we look to it, is plan, source, make, and then deliver. And I agree with what you said earlier, is indeed like the manufacturers typically stops at, hey, we have delivered that to the first economic customer. But if you look to value for the patient, one of the key values we are adding as Amgen is we ensure that medicine is always available. And so we're very proud that the availability is a key element. But if you look further in the future, and you're right, the healthcare system need to change, and what can we do more? I think we have to extend our view of supply chain to not only plan, source, make, and deliver, but also look to how is the medicine prepared, how is it used, how is it disposed, that are also logistical and supply chain type of questions. And if you then look to the patient, then what you will see is the patient also goes through like a journey. They get like, there's maybe a phase where they don't know yet that they have something, and then they get diagnosed, then they get onboarded on a treatment. You have the whole treatment itself, and then I think there's a big question about adherence. And I think if we overlay those two parts of like the supply chain process and the patient journey, I think there's a lot we still can add to make the experience for the patient better than it is today. And so what's very important for us as a manufacturer is to understand that. And we do things like with devices, so new features and devices you can connect and to IoT, you get more data, and that data could help us a lot in the future is to make that patient experience better in the sense of adherence or how to use the medication.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. So I'm curious how Maarten thinks of this.
Thank you, Linda. I would not say it's impossible, but I'm only speaking about the last part of the supply chain, the supply to the patient. And patient support programs are not new in the Netherlands. I think before 2000 there were patient support programs by national pharmacies, and later on patient support programs also organized from the hospital, and especially in the outpatient pharmacy where I work. And for example, we specialize in cystic fibrosis, what I earlier told you. And the main thing why these programs are set up is because, and it is always organized around expensive specialistic medication. And I think the idea behind that is twofold. One of the main things is the availability of this medication, because when you deliver it to 1,600 pharmacies in the Netherlands, no pharmacy will have this in stock. So the availability for the patient can be a problem. We saw that with medication for HIV, but also we saw that with medication for patients with cystic fibrosis, which is the patient who is using rather expensive medications. And the other thing is secure the expertise about this medication. I found it was not logical to centralize CF care and then decentralize pharmaceutical care. That should be connected to each other. Because when I set up this program, I actually talked to 60 patients, and then I learned it's also very difficult to add patient value. And I think it's not possible in every stage of the supply chain, because when you're adding patient value to the development of the drug, that's not normal. Now, a new product is in the last phase and only looking at safety and efficacy, but it's not. Is the form right? Is the dosing right? Are we going to redesign the drugs because you have to take it 3 times a day, or you have to take it IV, or I didn't see that yet. But I think that's the main challenging. can we make it suitable for patients at home? And can we avoid different or very complex doses? Can we change that? Can we remodel the drug that is suitable for drugs? And there are many examples. One is for severe asthma. Only before it was only IV in the hospital, and within 2 years it's going with a subcutaneous injection, and it's very it's easy to use. So there are a lot of good examples, I think, and that's my last thing. Therefore, I'm always looking for the holy grail, and that's to improve adherence. And we developed a lot of medication. We developed a vaccine within 1 year, but we can't improve adherence. And according to the World Health Organization, it's the third biggest problem in healthcare. And I think that's going to be the challenge for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Maarten. I think for the next time you can put your micro a bit different, because the sound sometimes drops a bit. Okay, good. Caroline, what do you think?
Yes, thank you, Linda. Well, when you phrased your statement, immediately I thought, well, if you put it like that, it is impossible for the supply chain to be patient-centric. My mind immediately goes to the last party in the chain, so the one that's closest to the customer. So typically the pharmacist. And I think for them, for sure, they can add value there. So that made the question rather easy. It will be possible for sure. But then I think it's interesting to think higher up in the chain, how and what might we do there. That's also a patient-centric mindset. And in that sense, I was inspired when Danielle earlier used the word adherence and thinking about how patients use their medicine. I can for sure think of some examples where, for example, patients who have trouble swallowing, you might think about a different way of administering the same drug, or patients that have trouble grabbing small items, so you might want to make bigger pills for them. Also in terms of storage, if medicine requires a cold chain, can we make it easier for patients to use it appropriately, avoid creating waste that way? And I was also thinking about, and this is perhaps a little bit different from the things that Danielle and Amgen would typically think about when they're worrying about adherence. But now I'm thinking about generic medicines, where patients switch brands, still using the same drug, the same chemical ingredients, but the box looks different. This is known to affect therapietrouw in Dutch, so the compliance. So that would be an interesting area where the whole supply chain actually affects whatever eventually happens for the patient at home.
Okay, good. Thank Caroline. Just ask the panel members any response to each other, maybe.
Yes, thank you. I hope the sound is better.
Yes.
Okay. I think what Caroline said is a main problem in the Netherlands. What I already found out that for very expensive medication, there are a lot of patient support programs. That a patient doesn't use only gladly, not only very expensive medication. And when medication get generics, there is no funding, and patient support program and funding adherence programs cannot be financed from the regular fees. We need support from the producers. So that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Maarten.
Yeah, and maybe.
Yeah, go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah, and so and maybe I'm indeed looking at from an innovative research-based company, but I actually hearing the questions around adherence and treating at home. I do think there is where if you look to more like the devices and then technology-enabled devices could be like the step forward for patients is to one hand is to get the medicines applied at home, and then on the other hand is to get like tools available is to help with that adherence also for them, not only for us to get the data on that, but to help them in that process. So I think we kind of align that like supply chain could play a role, but supply chain is a very broad process actually. And it's not only at the manufacturer.
Yeah, very much true. And that's, of course, the challenge that we face, how we connect that. Good. Thank you very much. I think it's time to go to the next statement.
Are there any questions from the audience, by the way? Maybe if I also would like to invite the audience, if you have some questions or statements, don't hesitate to put it on the chat, because I think it will increase the liveliness of the discussion.
Yeah.
So next statement.
The next statement. We have to make it active for a moment. Patient centricity in a supply chain is not allowed due to data integrity and data privacy protection. So far, I only see one vote. Ah, there we go.
It's coming.
Yeah, takes a moment before it gets through. Okay, good. So what we see is that 87% disagree and 30% agrees. So also here the majority still think that we can work with data integrity and work further on that. So I like to give the opportunity to Caroline to say something about this one.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, I think, of course, the protection of privacy, it's certainly, it's an issue in the sense that it doesn't make it easier to be patient-centric, but at the same time, protecting their privacy and their data is also in their best interest. I'd just like to use as an example, if I go to my regular pharmacy and they have a history backlog of all the medication that I've been using, and then for some reason I need to go to a different pharmacy, if I allow them to share this information, they can access it. So it's maybe not a given that anyone's information is up for grabs, but certainly if the patient is willing to share, more is possible. So I also think the same should be possible higher upstream. And it's up to the individuals to decide if there's value in them to do so. So I see opportunities there, and I think we shouldn't think too much in terms of those restrictions. So that will be my take.
Yeah, so thinking solutions. Yeah. Okay, good. Danielle, how do you see that from a pharmaceutical point of view?
No, I agree with Caroline that privacy and data integrity is very, very important. That's already important today, that if you get like your medicines, that you can trust that and it's safe, and all the data around that indeed is secured. And I think it's right. It's like we need to find ways is to build that into the processes, and that there is I think a more willingness for people to share their information. But yeah, at the moment it gets violated if you get data breaches. Yeah, this would put the entire process under a lot of pressure. So I think it should be part of we start designing more this patient-centric supply chains, that data integrity and data privacy are built in, like we have building in data integrity today in the quality of our products.
Yeah, that's clear. Maarten, what's your view? Because you work with a lot of course, personal data. So how can that be shared?
Yeah, and also in the Haga Hospital. So we are not we are familiar with the laws and the rules about it. It's difficult, but it's certainty it's possible, and I think there's more possible than we think. We need some clear processing agreement between the pharmacy and the producer. As long data is pseudonymized, it's allowed. When it's not traceable to the patient, it's always allowed. And in a case of medication safety, there's even more. So that's a national law that the manufacturer has and must follow the medication safety. But it's always important to talk with the patient and explain why you collecting data. And we have a lot of experience with introducing the landelijk schakelpunt. Sorry for my Dutch word, LSP, but that's what Caroline also said, is that when you go to another pharmacy or another hospital, they will know your medication history. And I think that's very important for medication safety. And the people who are against it, that group is getting less, it's getting smaller. And before it was very damaged by Twitter and a certain group of people who don't want to share their data. And I can understand that. But if you explain it the right way, every patient agrees with it because it's for their own safety. So, I think when we want to do it right, and we want to reassure that there's the availability of medication is good, you have to share data with the manufacturer as well. That's very important. So I think there's more possible than we think.
Martin, may I ask you something from also from the chat? Do you think all parties within the supply chain are open to share patient-relevant data with each other? Hospitals, pharmacists, big pharma, insurance company, etc. What is your view on that?
That can be very challenging, I think, because sometimes it's fair. Fear about rules or regulatory affairs or something like that. In the Haga hospital, we're a little bit afraid of sharing data because we don't have a very nice experience with that. And so hospitals are more alert by giving data away because of the high fees you have to pay when something's not right. The industry is not willing to share data when it's maybe it's getting to their competition or when it's competitive or something like that. I think everybody has his own reason not to share data. But when we take the patient, when we look at the patient-centric, I think people are more willing to share data, and especially when it improves the product. So I think you have to change the point of view and not thinking with fear, but in opportunities, I think.
There's another question, I think, also coming in, which is maybe related to Danielle. So, Danielle, how do you see that, how such data can be incorporated in, let's say, in the ERP systems, or what needs to be done? Because I think that's really based on volumes and units. So do you think that we go to new kind of systems as well?
Yes, I do think. I don't think that type of data will be incorporated in indeed the basic ERP systems. And what I hear also in the discussion is, we talk a lot about, hey, if the patient is sick and what's the medication they get, that type of data. But if you look into the future, it's probably more about, like, if you really think patient-centric supply chain of patient centricity, it's about the outcome. What's the value for the patient, or maybe even before it becomes a patient? And I think there will come a whole set of data available in the future. Just everybody's now wearing their watches and their wearables, and all kinds of data is already collected even before the patient is actually sick. And I think the new technology is more around artificial intelligence and predicting certain diseases, all that kind of information. And so that's for sure not like in the basic manufacturing ERP type of systems. I think there will come a whole new world of data analytics on that type of data, where I think you can build in data privacy, but you have to do that right. And that's not only happening in pharma, that's happening all around the world. And I think these questions about data privacy are everywhere, and they need to be solved.
Yeah,
that's a very interesting statement, Danielle. Especially if you look, let's say, more from an outcome-based perspective. A lot of buzz at this moment is going around for value-based healthcare. What is, from your perspective, and Amgen is big in value-based healthcare, what is your perspective on the relation between patient-centric supply chain and value-based healthcare?
Now, I think what you will see, and that's what I started the conversation with, is that extending that view of the supply chain with the elements of, hey, how will treatment happen, how will onboarding happen, and adherence is. I believe there will come new types of partnerships. I don't think it's just the manufacturing will go all the way to the patient. It's the partnerships you need together. But I think the mindset will change in, hey, we are delivering a product as a Amgen manufacturing company, or we do the research and development. It will be fed by information out of that patient information on, like what we said earlier, is how you can adapt your dosing regime. How can you adapt your product? How can you add features? That's what the manufacturing will continue to do. But how to then help the patient with their process, that might be partners in the entire supply chain. That's probably not just the manufacturing going to do that in the future.
I think there's also a very nice bridge to you, Caroline, seeing your research. What is your perspective on it?
Yes, well, I was certainly triggered when Maarten was saying that anonymized data would be much more, would give much more possibilities, and for sure I agree with that. That will be the way forward, and I think. I was also triggered when Maarten was talking about a willingness to share data, and it wasn't so much the sharing of the data itself that would potentially be afraid of, but more consequences, penalties, if they had accidentally shared something that they shouldn't have. So perhaps that's also there's a role there for government maybe to play some part in that, where they might guarantee that you don't have such risks if they are somehow monitoring, let's say, how the data is shared, and just double checking for you that you are not running into any risk like that. Yeah, and I think the smart watches and the new technology, that's also a very interesting take from Danielle, which for sure will change the healthcare sector in the future. You can already start imagining which parties are going to play a big role in that and which parties are going to be powerful. That will be a shift, I think, compared to the current healthcare sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see another question, which is, I think, also related to it. Of course, sharing data is also, and bringing value for the patient is a part of value-based healthcare. We also thought about it up front. So what is the relation with patient-centric supply chain with value-based healthcare? Maybe Maarten, can you answer that question?
Yes, of course. I think the main focus is now on the prompt. I think we have to look more to trends, and for trends you need actually the patient's opinion. The prompt can be collected out of the hospital or lab data or something like that. It's easy to collect, but the prems that's more complex, and we're about where Caroline talked about smartwatches and can help with collecting trends, but I think it's important data to collect, and it's very difficult to collect. I think not many pharmacies or other suppliers are able to collect this data and analyze it on the right way. And I think we need the expertise of other parties in this supply chain to help us with that and to make it usable for patients. And only when you know something about the prem, you can introduce value-based healthcare. Otherwise, it's no need.
Fully agree.
And on the other hand, we have to talk with the government or insurance companies and rehustling the way we get paid. We don't know much, or we don't hear much about vendor payment, but maybe that's an interesting thing. Also for the manufacturer, because everybody is talking about introducing expensive medication and expensive technology, and that's why the healthcare costs are going sky high. But this introduction of new technology also can make some processes within the healthcare very more easy. For example, we are doing research with the PCSK9 inhibitors, also with Amgen, and it's more expensive than the other anti-cholesterol medication, but almost every patient is on target. It has a less side effect, and I think we can make for very high-risk patients, we can make the healthcare organization less complex and therefore much cheaper. And so you have to shift from expensive technology to more less complex healthcare organizations, and then it's going to be a big advantage, I think. But we have to think like that. So all the parties have to think different. Don't look at you have to take a bigger a wider picture, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicely said. Fully agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Caroline, something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Martin, I was glad that you brought up the topic of affordability, basically, because it's true that new technologies are often very expensive, but still, when you look at our national spending on pharmaceuticals per person, we are among the lowest in Europe. Only Portugal is cheaper than the Netherlands. So I think that's quite remarkable as well. But of course, this is driven by the incredible price reductions that we've seen for the generics in the last, say, 15 years. But this perhaps also tells you something about the current mindset of the Dutch system, the Dutch government. If you, whoever you think is taking these decisions, they're often driven by cost efficiency. So I think if you want to shift that, that will be quite a challenging task.
Yeah, that's one indeed of the challenges that is constantly brought up after research. Absolutely. Okay, good. Thank you very much. I think it's nice to go to the third statement. So you can go back to your Mentimeter. Menti.com, code is 40256241. Yeah. And that statement is a patient-centric supply chain can only be applied to specific, well-defined patient groups. So take a moment to think about it and to give your opinion about it. Maarten, we lost, I think, you in the meantime on the camera. Oh, there you are again. So we have your
This
sound.
is an interesting. We just had 3 reactions at this moment.
Okay, so so far I see that majority is agreeing with this one, and I think 1/3 is disagreeing with this statement. Perfect. I think this is a nice one to start with Maarten, as he from Haga is also supplying to certain kind of patient groups. So Maarten, I see your sound is on. We don't see your face anymore, so.
Oh, okay. Is better?
This is better.
That's better. Also, the sound is a bit better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's true, because we have proven that we can set up a patient support program for a specific patient group. What I early told, we did that for cystic fibrosis. I first speak to 60 individual patients, and that's what I learned. It's very complex, because every patient has his own opinion, and you can do best for all patients. So a patient support program is always individual. You have to reach organize your program sometimes to improve the patient-centric supply for an individual patient, and that makes it complex. What I want 10 years, 30 years ago, is to create a one-stop model for these patients. Because I learned that patients with cystic fibrosis or other complex diseases, patients are really challenged by getting their medication. They have to deal with several different suppliers, and I think the main reason is because health insurance are not contracting one party in this supply. They contract a party which delivers, for instance, the inhalers or other medications. So the patient is forced to get along with more suppliers, and that makes it complex. So my one-stop model, it's impossible. And I can be fully patient-centric because I can't deliver everything to this patient. And we talk with other suppliers. Just give us a little stock so we can give it to the patient, and we later on make an agreement about payment or something. But I think I think it's strange that insurance companies will contract hospitals about specific diseases, but the pharmacy, it's impossible. You can get a specific contract for a specific patient group, and I think for specialized patients, I think that's the way we have to organize that, because then you're able to centrate your expertise about this disease, and especially for cystic fibrosis, we are in the beginning of a new period, a new stage in this disease. There are very potent medications, and it can be that a lot of other medications can be stopped when they start with this medication. So, but you have to be very clear about that. So the doctor, the nurse, but also the pharmacist has to talk the same language and has to say the same story. So I think for specific patient groups, we have to centralize it more and centralize the expertise.
Yeah.
But it's not possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Maarten. We still don't see you, unfortunately.
Oh.
We hear you. That's also good.
I see you, Maarten. It's a bit of a mix, apparently, for people.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Caroline, what do you think of it?
Yes, well, your statement made me think of a story that I heard when I was doing the interviews for our research in the pharmaceutical supply chain. And this was about a disease that normally only occurs in women. And there was a treatment plan, a drug that the insurance would cover for any woman with this disease. And then somehow, very unlikely, a man got the same disease. And insurance companies wouldn't cover that drug, even though it was what the team of doctors recommended. They thought that he would benefit from the drug that women got for this as well. And eventually, the manufacturer of the drug decided to provide it free of charge, which I thought was very nice, but also doesn't sound like a very sustainable idea. So I was thinking of this because if you were to create very well-defined patient groups for your adding patient-centric value, you would have always missed this man. So there is a risk there. I feel like in some sense what will create value is the flexibility that you want to add. And I would worry about missing that if you are too strict in your definitions of the patients that you are going to do this for. So that was one anecdote that I wanted to share. Now let me argue for the other side, because I do think if you're thinking pragmatically and you're wanting to introduce something like this, I do think that it makes sense to, let's say, consider some sort of ranking of maybe the diseases or the kind of patients where you see value could be added, because starting with everyone and everything at once, that seems way too big. So yeah, I do see where you're coming from with the statement.
So Danielle, indeed, how do you think to absorb that in the pharmaceutical organizations and systems?
Yeah, no, as what Caroline was saying, indeed, it's maybe not only the well-defined patient group, but you cannot do it for everyone. It's a huge change, I think, we're going to go through, because a patient-centric supply chain should then deliver tailor-made solutions, and we are not Coca-Cola or like other things where you can just do that. This is very complex supply chain management, and so I think going through the change of thinking about the patient and thinking like from the viewpoint of the patient, what value is for the patient. It might not be only the drug in the future anymore. It might be the quality of life, where other things may be more important for the patient than only the drug. Or indeed, as what Maart was saying, maybe it's if you start with one, you can stop other things. And that is, I think, such a huge shift in just thinking about healthcare. That's going to take a lot of time. And if you want to start like we do at Amgen, you have to pilot small, you have to take the first steps, you need to learn. Because we all need to change then the way you don't get paid anymore only for the drug like we get paid now. But what is the system of payment then in the future? So I think there are still many questions out there. But I'm actually proud that Amgen is taking the step to explore this and to start like working, because you have to take one step if you on this journey if you want to go there. And I think we all agree that the healthcare system is under a lot of pressure and that we have to make changes, and this could be one in the right direction. So I agree with the statement, but this and I think there's where innovative pharma companies could play a role, because then there is more to invest for us in the entire chain.
That's clear. Okay, let me check a question. So what is this is a good one maybe for you, Danielle. What do you see as the biggest challenge for the pharmaceutical supply chain to become more patient-centric? Because it is indeed a big systemic change. What is the biggest hurdle here from your point of view? And I will also check with Caroline and Maarten, but from
no, I think as a pharma company, biotech company, it's a very regulated world, so it's just not easy to make a change in general, internally, like in the process we do today. And this is very future thinking, and I'm strong believer we have to make that change. But I think there is a lot of parties who need to align, and I think indeed governments play a role here. Patient support programs play a role in here, is to do this together. And I think just the change itself is to think from a value healthcare system to now we produce and we supply type of system. That's a major change to make. But again, what I just said is we start thinking about it, we start piloting, and with success, and I think we can, if all the parties in the chain believe in this change, should be able to work, but not next year. I think time is another big important thing here.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so it's really a systemic change, and you need to do it step by step, and starting small and adapt and learn along the way. I think that's crucial in this this current phase.
Yeah. So, Maarten, how do you see that to become patient-centric? You already have more opportunity to work like that with your patient support program, like you just mentioned, for cystic fibrosis. What do you see if you look more, going up in the stream of the supply chain? What do you see as the biggest challenge? You're on mute still?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge will be in the development of medication. But I earlier point on, are you gonna remodel the product if research pointed out that you have to take it 4 or 5 times a day, and is it suitable product are gonna re-challenge or redesign the drug, and I think that it's going to be very complex to challenge that, and I don't know if it's financially possible to do that. I write down one word is working together. I think that's just talk to each other. And now I only talking with the pharmaceutical companies in the more in the patient related, but maybe we can make a discussion on a more upstream level. Maybe that's just learn from each other. I think that could be a very good start.
It's another brick in the wall, reducing the walls between all the different silos. I think that's the first step you need to take, and someone needs to take the first step and show the results and show that it really impacts and improves the patients' lives. And then I strongly believe that it will be a snowball, and that it is attracting other parties and other stakeholders.
Yeah, I'm also curious, Caroline. You have done, of course, helped out with the research. So, what was the outcome there as the biggest challenge for to get an overview of the pharmaceutical supply chain?
Our challenge in getting an overview of the supply chain, I think people generally were quite willing to share information with us, and I also found that all of the individual partners in the chain tended to have the patient's best interest at heart. This is also when you're thinking about drug shortages. Nobody wants there to be a shortage. The people producing the medicine and the wholesalers, they all want to sell. Like there's an incentive there to have the product in stock. So I saw everywhere that intentions were good, but what was somehow interesting was that it's such a big chain, highly regulated, like you said today, and many partners, that sometimes if a problem occurs somewhere in the chain, a very typical response is more regulation. In the Netherlands, we really like to make things mandatory. And if you can't comply, we like to give a big fine. This really created such a complex structure where even though every individual party is doing their best, it's not always producing the best global solution, let's say. So I think this made the pharmaceutical sector so much more difficult than any other sector that I've seen. I see a lot of people nodding in my screen, so I'm wondering. Before I heard Danielle say that it's really about not just treating the disease, but improving the quality of life of that person. And I was wondering, Danielle, if you found if you are happy with current ways of measuring improvement in quality of life.
Of measuring the quality of life, I think also that is for a pharma company, it is still a challenge is to actually define that. What is quality of life, or what are the outcomes the patient actually expect? And there you see, it's not like one patient wants something completely different than somebody else. And I think we are doing our steps is to like define these outcomes. But it's still very early stage, and I think that is important to truly start thinking from the patient, from like people, and not from like, hey, we push medicines into the chain.
An interesting question is coming from the audience, which is aligned with this discussion. Do you think, Daniela, let's start with you. Do you think patient centricity is a topic for product design and not for supply chain?
That's a very good question. And I do think it's for both. And I think supply chain and product design should go hand in hand. I think the opportunity supply chain may have in the future to be closer with their commercial organization, like at what the patient's needs are, what outcomes do we want to generate, and feed that back into the product design teams. Because again, like this research based, and what Marta just said is, like if you have to take like 8 pills a day for a whole month, that might be is another different way. And what we have done in Engine is indeed for some of our medicines we developed like devices, so patients do not have to come back to the hospital the next day after they had like a treatment for a very serious illness. You would like to stay home. Is there a way of like a delayed mechanism is to inject that medication? What can we do? But that is a true combination of supply chain and product design. That those two things should go hand in hand in my mind.
Yeah.
Nice example.
Yeah, very, very good. And when I was preparing the whole the webinar together with the team, we were thinking like, yeah, okay, we see all the challenges, and of course it's still a long way to go. It will not be done next week of next year, even not. It's really a systemic change. So I thought about it. How should we approach? What can we do? So I'm wondering what your view is on that. So Caroline, how do you see that? Maybe with some results from your research.
You're mute, Caroline.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Our research in itself doesn't specifically focus on this. So if you read that report, you won't find this answer in there. But I'm now thinking, first of all, I see you need to get some key parties on board. So I don't think it's a given that everyone agrees that this is the way forward yet. Maybe they will, maybe it will take time, but I think you should think carefully which parties you need on board. So a company like Amgen is, of course, a great start if they are intrinsically motivated to do this. For sure, that's one of those parties. But maybe also think about insurance and or government, like they are somehow closely connected. And at least, I do believe that within those organizations you will find subsets of people that will be motivated to try this. I think, to make steps forward, but you need to find the right people there, because as a whole, I don't think those organizations are ready for this.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very clear. Maarten, how do you see that? If you could take the open opportunity, how would you approach to set this up?
That's a difficult question, because how should I approach that? I think what I earlier said, just talking. Yeah, I have to look at the pharmacy industry right now. It's still a certain moment for us. It's a black box. So we don't know when a new product is introduced or is developed, and I understand that because there is a big competition, so you don't want to give answers to your product in the early stage, because then maybe the competitive industry will go away with it. But if you want to be patient-centric, that will be, I think, the key for success. And maybe you have to compete with each other in doing that the best. And maybe your product is then better than the other. But that's maybe very holistic thinking, but I think that could be a good approach. But it's difficult, but it can be.
Yeah.
So if I understand you correctly, it's really putting the patient central, really in the middle.
Yeah.
And everything organizing around it. If it's drug related, if it's healthcare insurance related, etc., etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And in the early stage, you have to talk with insurance companies, but always with regulatory or with governments, also about pricing and yeah, I think, and organization, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe a lot. Yeah, go ahead, Danielle. I wanted to give you the word.
Yeah, so maybe last comment from my end. I was thinking indeed, and hearing what Marta and what Caroline was saying, indeed, this is about collaboration. And I think we may need to start thinking about, like, you need an orchestrator, a ketenregisseur, because this goes beyond the manufacturing, this goes beyond the pharmacist, and how do you orchestrate all the pieces of the puzzle in light of what's needed for the patient. And I do think each of these partners in the chain can take a lead role initially, but over time, there might be something in place which is a bit more independent from all of us. Because if you do it in light of the interest of the patient, incentive structures may be in the way for the individual parts of the chain.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking that in that sense, there can also be a role for a patient interest group. So we haven't talked about those at all, but I think they could play a role. And finally, I was thinking about the media. I do think it could play a bigger role in increasing just public awareness that this is even an issue, because I don't think it's talked about a lot. So maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
Majority of the discussions is about cost and not about the topics where we are discussing now.
Yeah.
There's also an interesting question coming from the audience. We talked a lot about, let's say, more the pharmacy or pharmaceutical perspective from a hospital perspective, but there is also a question from how can care institutes, for example, elderly care, contribute to or profit from a patient-centric supply chain, as we house a diversity of people in our institutions that take a variety of medicines? Interesting question. What is your view on that, Maarten?
Yes, I think that's a good idea, because that's what I did with a patient with cystic fibrosis, because they are treated here in the hospital, and I follow the patient everywhere where it goes, and knowing the patient is key. That's I think the biggest critical success factor in your supply chain.
Yep.
So organize it by people who are very familiar with the patient and the problems with that patient. It can be a very I think a critical party in this process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Danielle, Caroline, something to add on that, or?
Yes, I was thinking in terms of identifying which patients would benefit most from this, that care institutions could play a big role there, because they observe a large number of people with different health conditions, and they see them all day, which is also different from the doctor who sees them only during an appointment. And they might be able to judge and compare much better than, let's say, a single person looking after their spouse or their parent, who might have individual concerns, but the people working at the Care Institute can compare. So there will be an opportunity there.
Great. Any other?
Yeah, I agree. Like, again, back to if you overlay the patient journey with the supply chain, that's where a lot of patients are. So, and where adherence and getting people on the medication and all those steps happen. So yeah, it's an important part of the chain, but it might also be an interesting part to start thinking about. Hey, could you get like a bigger group of patients together as to pilot this? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we already going slowly, let's say, in the closure. We already answering questions that we will get. So we have a final question here, and yeah, it comes a little bit close to the last statement. It's about specific defined patient groups, but yeah, what about, for example, is a patient-centric supply chain only applicable for rare chronic diseases? So it's so specific, you have your fixed patient group, so can we only apply it to such particular patient groups? So yeah, Maarten, I start with you, of course. I know that you're very involved in that part.
Yes, it is possible, but what I earlier pointed out, it's made impossible because of the, and I sorry for that again, but we can only organize this because we get a fee from a pharmaceutical company. So that's why it's always for a specific patient group. But with Amgen, we do a project, and it's called for cardiovascular risk management, which is a more like a container disease. They're diabetic, or they're hypertensive, or they have a problem with the cholesterol, and all the group against the risk of a cardiovascular disease. So that's a more wide group, and I think that it's smaller, but I think it's also certainly in this group it's very important to be cooperative with each other, with working with each other, because a patient with a cardiovascular risk has many doctors, has many pharmacists, has many suppliers, has many medication, and but in our medical standard, we put all these diseases together, and it's brought in a container. So we have also to organize it like a container, and now it's in a container, but it's still treated by different parties and with different medications. So it's complex. So the risk will stay high, and we are not able to lower that risk. So I think it's possible, and we're starting it. We are investing in it. I think we are investing in now. Is it possible to organize that?
Yeah.
Nice.
Good, thank you. Maybe a quick point of view from you, Caroline, upon this one.
Yeah, I was thinking, I hope not, because if the answer is yes, then somehow the effect for individual patients might be fantastic, but on a larger scale, that would not justify spending so much time on this. So, and then hearing the examples from Martin, like the cardiovascular diseases, I mean, they are not exactly rare. So, luckily, I think we should look beyond the rare chronic diseases.
Yeah. Danielle, your view?
Yeah, I agree with that. It should go beyond, and maybe if you just like, I think it's difficult to do it like on generics, but I think if you look to the innovative medicines, that's probably where where there's more chance that you can change the curve here.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. I think we can go to the last part. There's only 8 minutes left, so Patrick.
Yeah, if there are no additional questions anymore from the audience, I would say we call it a webinar. First of all, I would like to thank the speakers for the time and also honest and transparent discussions. I really liked it. Our aim for today was to inspire and share experience. And if you ask me, I think we succeeded and realized the objective. From that perspective, again, I would like to thank the speakers for today. And would like to thanks also the audience for putting the questions on the chat. And if you have some additional questions, don't hesitate to contact me or Linda. And we would like to thank you very much and wish you a pleasant day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for organizing.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.